Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rivers of Rejuvenation YouTube live watch party, where we will be wrapping up our 3-episode summer series titled RejuveNation, Building Resilience in Urban Native Youth, where we've been discussing culture, community and connections, art and advocacy, and healthy environments. We kindly ask that you place your name, organization, tribal affiliation, and title into the chat box, please. So my name is Cameron Yanchik, and I am a NCUIH Rivers of Rejuvenation Youth Council member, and today's episode 3 watch party host. Joining me from the NCUIH Youth Council is Michaeli Steen, who you guys are going to be hearing a lot from in today's episode, as well as Elena Yellowbird, another Youth Council member who is supporting us from behind the scenes today. So in today's episode, we are going to be talking about environmental and mental resilience as urban Native youth. Next slide, please. So for today's watch party, I will be going over some housekeeping, how you all can get entered for the chance to win some prizes at the end of the episode. And then after that quick overview, then we will jump right in and watch our third and final interactive episode, and then doing the prize drawing at the end. Next slide, please. With this being our very last episode of the series, we wanted to start off by thanking everyone who has supported our YouTube series by joining us for these past 3 episodes. It's so special to see so many of the familiar names popping up, episode 1, 2, and then for today for episode 3. So we really appreciate everyone's support. And for those of you who might be tuning in for the first time, we are also so incredibly thankful for your support as we close out this very special project for us. And so today's episode centers around wellness and resilience with a focus on the environment, both around us and within us. This episode also features our special guest speaker, Jeanette Acosta, who shares some really amazing wisdom that I really cannot wait for you all to hear. With that being said, before we dive into the last episode, I wanted to give a quick overview of tonight's watch party and how you can get entered for some prizes. Next slide, please. If you've been tuning in with us these past 2 episodes, you're well in the loop and you know what to expect. But in case this is your first time, wanted to really go over how everyone can interact. So we're about to start the live stream, and throughout the episode, we're going to be asking you all some questions in the episode and posting them in the chat box below. And we encourage you all to share your thoughts with us by commenting and posting anything that you might have to say in reaction to the video, really engaging in that dialogue. Anyone who answers any of the questions will be eligible to win some really amazing prizes, but make sure that you stay until the end of the episode for a link that will get you officially entered into the raffle so we can contact you for your prize after the watch party. So with that being said, we're going to jump right into the last episode. So thank you all for tuning in, and see you all after the show.
Hello and welcome to the Rivers of Rejuvenation series, RejuveNation, Building Resilience in Urban Native Youth, where we talk about culture, community and connections, art and advocacy, and healthy environments. We are your hosts, a couple members of the NCUIH Youth Council. OCO Michaeli Steen Dakwadon Di Jalagi. Hi, my name is Michaeli Steen. I am a member of the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma, which is home for me most of the time, but I'm also a PhD student at UC Berkeley in the Environmental Science Policy and Management Department. And I'm going to turn it over to Cameron to introduce herself.
Este estongo Cameronyanchik Chahojifkados. Hello, how are you? My name is Cameron Yanchik. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a citizen of the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma, as well as a descendant of the Muskogee Nation. I'm a recent graduate of the University of Oklahoma in Norman, with degrees in political science and Native American studies. I've grown up in the Oklahoma City metro area my whole life, but recently moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is where I am currently calling in from today.
Awesome. Congrats on your recent graduation. That's so exciting. So our mission as a youth council is to work together in creating and fostering resources and pathways for Native youth to flourish. In doing so, we strive to rejuvenate Native youth's mental, physical, and spiritual health. We as a council envision diverse communities of Native youth who are grounded in culture, equipped with knowledge, creativity, and resources to be an empowered advocate for the health of themselves and their environments. Today, for this episode, our third episode in this series, we're going to be discussing three main objectives, and that includes recognizing how Native youth can connect to the environment while in an urban area, understanding how environments can impact our mental and behavioral health, and knowing how to utilize nature and the environment to address mental health challenges. Today's episode will have a special guest interviewee, and we are so excited to introduce them shortly. And we're also excited to share that you will have a chance to win some cool prizes today. So we ask everyone to stay until the end of the episode. You'll have a chance to be entered into a raffle, and you might win a Unity t-shirt, a Healthy Native Youth swag bag, and some cool Native tote bags. So without further ado, we're going to get going with our discussion today. And to start off, I wanted to ask Cameron, how do we conceptualize the environment in an urban Native area? You mentioned how you've grown up in the Oklahoma City and sort of Tulsa metro areas. And so I'm wondering how you conceptualize the environment in that sort of area. And I also want to pose this question to anyone that might be watching this right now. So go ahead and drop a comment about how you conceptualize the environment in an urban area in the chat or in the comments.
Yeah, thank you so much, McKinley. I think that's a great topic to start our discussion on, because a lot of the times whenever we do have discussions about the environment and about places of nature, I feel like a lot of the times we really don't bring urban spaces into the conversation. And I think a lot of the times in these discussions, they're even thought of as really being disjoint concepts, really disconnected and even contradictory at times. But I think that it's really important to remember, especially as urban Native youth, that we really are always in the environment and really can always think of ourselves as being in these environmental spaces, whether that be from the air that we're breathing, from the light that we are exposed to on a daily basis, the water that we drink, the water that surrounds us, whether that be from rivers or rain, or even just the land itself, if that's, an urban green space or just soil that we can use in like a windowsill garden. Everything around us really is a part of nature, and we are a part of that as well. Even if we don't always take notice of that in more kind of urban metropolitan spaces, and even if others around us also don't give these spaces the attention that it deserves. And I think another really important thing to remember about this concept is that we are also always on native land. Whether that land has, skyscrapers on it, or whether there's, housing developments on it. Just because we might not be in a reservation community or on a sacred site in a specific place that might be more rural or remote, we're always walking on native land. And I think that for a lot of us who are urban natives, we're kind of cognizant of, whose land we are on, whether that be our own people or other tribes who have, been there since time immemorial, or maybe have been moved there forcibly in more recent time. But that's always something as well to take note of and really hold to high regard, is recognizing that you're always on native land, and the original stewards of that land who still have claim to that as well. And kind of going off of that, I think that this leads into another conversation, not only about how we might conceptualize the environment, also how we can interact with our urban environments and imagine ourselves as stewards of the environment in urban areas. So with that, I want to turn it back to you, McKaylee, and ask you, since environmental stewardship is not just limited to rural reservation communities, how can youth advocate for healthy environments in the city?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for reminding us all that we are all on native land all of the time, wherever you are in Turtle Island. That is such a good thing to remember, whether there's skyscrapers or whatnot. So I think to answer the question, about environmental stewardship and how youth can advocate for healthy environments within a city, I think it's first important to kind of define stewardship and think about how we are in relationship with a place and how so many of our relationships are reciprocal, and we're kind of in kinship with other people and other non-human things. And you mentioned the air and the water. And so all of those things are important to have a reciprocal relationship with, where we're not just getting something from those things, we're giving back to those things and trying to create a healthy space with those things as well. So the first thing that I think is important to do is to get familiar with what's available to you and kind of get familiar with your surroundings. A lot of communities have community gardens or parks with volunteer opportunities. Out in the Bay Area, where I'm at for grad school, in the little neighborhood I live in, there's a little community garden. And so that's a really fun way to kind of get involved, get to know people from the community a little bit better. We also have an Indigenous student learning garden on campus, and that's been awesome to have like a Three Sisters garden. And then with the harvests from that, we do different things. So we're very much in an urban setting, but there are ways that we're finding to stay connected to our landscape. And I think that it's important to explore parks and nature reserves, go for hikes with your friends if you're able, and also just because an urban environment is different from the outdoors environment that you might be most comfortable in, it's still an environment, as Cameron was talking about. It's still very much an environment that we can, find a place in. And so find or create those spaces that are important and comforting to you, and be a good relative and take care of the spaces that you do find and are able to be a part of.
Yes, I absolutely loved how you really emphasized being a good relative to the environment and taking care of your surroundings, while also recognizing how much the environment can take care of us, and also how different spaces can provide comfort to us and have really support that sense of kinship, not only to the earth and non-human kin, but also, our other urban Indigenous relatives who are finding themselves living in the city. So I think that really leads nicely into another point that we wanted to discuss regarding understanding how environments impact mental and behavioral health. So to kick off that discussion, what are some strategies to promote mental wellness and connect to the environment that you've encountered, McKaylee? And then also, before you answer, I want to throw this question back to our audience as well. So please, for everyone who's listening and watching, drop a comment with some strategies for how you promote mental wellness and connect to the environment around you.
Yeah, would love to see what other people have to say or what their strategies are, because everyone is different and we all need different things. For me, it's really important for me to get outside and have time in the outdoors. So even in an urban environment, I really prioritize going for a walk through certain neighborhoods. That can be really refreshing. If you're close to a green space, find ways to get there with friends or groups. Maybe your campus, if you're a college student, can be a green space for you. I know my campus has a lot of really beautiful trees. So sometimes even though you're on a campus and there's lots of buildings, sometimes just walking around and admiring what is there is really nice. And some universities also have like outdoor recreation groups that you can partake in. And so they might go on camping trips or hiking things. So if it's hard for you to kind of get out there and do it on your own, maybe finding a group that you can do that with is really helpful. And I know that sometimes it can be a real privilege to access these spaces, or to have transportation to these spaces even. So I want to be aware of that, and not everybody can travel to somewhere to get more into nature if they're in an urban area. So try and find a way to appreciate the environments that you do have access to, and find ways to connect however you can there.
Yes, 100%. The environment can definitely be that source of healing and connection. And it's really important to prioritize those positive impacts on our mental health as urban Native youth. And you're definitely right about that being a privilege sometimes. I also really love how you directed people to taking advantage of opportunities that they might have on their college campus if they're a student. I know that's something that I really loved about my campus. It was in a suburban, small city area, but there was definitely a lot of beautiful landscaping and just open areas to take in, and definitely a lot of student-led initiatives. We had a community garden as well. There was also a beekeeping club at my university that I never personally joined myself, but I really was their biggest fan, and I would just follow all their social media. And they even had honey sales once they got their systems going and being really productive. And that was just the coolest thing ever. I thought that was so neat. And then another thing that also comes to my mind is there was a group of students within the Native community that had a running group where they would get out and just go running together around campus and really emphasize that time to be outside, really getting some physical activity, and also, being with other Native youth and, building that sense of kinship. And so, that's something that takes, no money to do. It's free to go run. And, there's a lot of good, mental benefits, physical benefits, social benefits that, again, can really boost that sense of community amongst other Native youth or, non-Native youth as well. So I think you brought up a lot of really great points there. So thank you so much for that. And I would also really love to hear from all the listeners and viewers at home about your favorite go-to activity to promote mental wellness while connecting with the environment.
Yeah, definitely let us know what that is for you. And I also wanted to acknowledge and maybe turn the conversation to a slightly different point. We're talking a lot about getting outside and being in nature and how great that can be for our mental health and our physical and spiritual health too. But I also want to acknowledge that there are factors within and related to the environment that can potentially threaten our mental health. So for Indigenous youth today, we're also very aware of the fights around environmental racism and injustice, and Indigenous communities are often frontline communities when it comes to climate change and other environmental crises. And so when we're hearing these stories about the climate crisis and environmental degradation, that can be really anxiety inducing and painful to hear. I'm wondering how we can preserve our mental health while remaining engaged in this fight. I don't know, Cameron, if you have any suggestions or insight there.
Yeah, this is definitely a really important, and, it can get really heavy, but I think it's definitely worth addressing as well, because you're absolutely right. Indigenous communities very much are frontline communities, not only here, but in an international context as well, whether that be in a more rural space, but even right here in the city when it comes to urban environmental racism. And so for me, activism can most definitely be very motivating, but it can also be very exhausting. Seeing so many of our relatives, like I said, here, also in international context, really being such an inspiration and taking this really important action and being the, just really fearless protectors and stewards of the environment is something that is really uplifting and really powerful. And something that definitely deserves so much recognition and so much appreciation. And so that's something that does motivate me to keep going, seeing that it's not all hopeless, that there are, really amazing, powerful Indigenous activists creating such important change and progress. But then again, on the other side, it can get really easy to be, bogged down by, negative news and just pushback. And so really trying to appreciate those who are taking positive action and creating change is definitely something to be, aware of and to, try to hold on to as much as possible. Indigenous people have such a large stake in this fight. So it's also important on that note to remember self-care as well. Don't feel bad about not engaging at full capacity 100% of the time, because burnout is very, very real. And it's just as important to preserve your energy so that your action can be sustainable. So I think, like I said, again, it's just so important to recognize all the progress that's happening, but also, again, just to really honor your own energy and your own, mental, spiritual well-being, and know when to take care of yourself so that, you can continue also on this fight and continue your support and your work in whatever you're doing.
I think that that's really great advice, especially when it comes to self-care and kind of prioritizing that. That's something I think we can forget to do a lot. And it's kind of cheesy, but I really like the saying, put on your oxygen mask before you help other people. Because if you don't put on your oxygen mask first, then you're not going to be able to help other people. So as cheesy as that might sound, I think that's a really, really wonderful point. So thank you, Cameron. Moving on with our discussion, we are going to introduce and bring in our interviewee, our guest for this episode today. I'm going to start by introducing her. So our guest for this episode is Jeanette Acosta, who was raised in a household visited by traditional Indigenous healers who imbued in her the respect of these sacred traditions. Her experience dealing with international business people, world diplomats, heads of state, renowned artists, celebrities, and politicians, the list goes on, gives her a unique perspective on various cultures and customs. She has extensive experience in herbology, ethnobotany, flower essences, diet and nutrition, yoga and meditation, creating supportive lifestyles for living addiction-free and life purpose cultivation. She elevates the value and versatility of all souls that she encounters, and we're so grateful to have Jeanette here with us in this space to speak on environmental and mental resilience. So welcome, Jeanette. Hi. Thank you so much for being here. To start our discussion for this portion of our episode, I wanted to get going with a question. If you want to introduce yourself further, please feel free to do that. But the first question that I'm going to start with is, what are some strategies to promote mental wellness and to connect to the environment? And I think you're muted. It's so fun in this virtual space.
Hi, thank you for the introduction. I think that was plenty. I think first and foremost is to just connect to your breath and to give thanks to that. Because without our breath, which, in Latin, they say it's inspira, to be inspired by life, to be inspired to be alive today, and to greet the day with that breath, to give thanks to that breath is a way to start, and to be really aware of your breath. They say the inhale is one thing and your exhale is another, and the space in between where you don't breathe is where Creator resides inside of you, and to connect to the part where you don't breathe, and to just grasp that and just be grateful for this day and be grateful to be alive. That's a start.
Yeah, I think that's just really beautiful and powerful. So thank you so much for sharing. I also love that that's something that, we can all do no matter where we are. So I think that's just a perfect bit of wisdom to give to everyone. So thanks so much for sharing that with us. So I wanted to lead into another question based on one of the organizations that you're involved in, which is Weaving Earth. But the Weaving Earth website features a really compelling quote that I found about remembering that humans are a part of nature and not apart from it. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that and what that quote means to you and how we should best conceptualize what all nature and the environment really entails.
You know, when we say our traditional prayers, typically we end it with 3 words that says, all my relations. And really, I think that's what the quote alludes to, is that we as human beings have a symbiotic relationship to everything in creation and everyone in creation. We may not get along with everyone, you know, just like the plant world does not get along with all its relatives, but we strive to find the communities that support us fully, that love us fully, that engage and acknowledge us fully. And so I feel that that's what that quote alludes to, is for us to remember that we are sentient beings that have a symbiotic relationship to everything and everyone in the universe. And we are but a fragment, but we hold a piece of that thread that weaves everything together by creator and creation.
Absolutely. And as you're talking about finding that community that kind of supports us and builds us up, it reminds me of some of our earlier conversation about, you know, finding those places where you can be in nature or be in community with people. And so we were talking a little bit about the how to get there, but I'm wondering if you could elaborate more on why it's important to create healthy environments for, you know, yourself, the people that you're around.
Well, they say that the state of your environment is a reflection of what's going on inside yourself and your mind. And so if you have a super messy room, then there's something in your head that's like not organized or not right in some way. And when you kind of go, who's that Japanese lady, Marie Kondo, which is kind of like extreme in organization, but you know, those organized, clean spaces really help you in your studies as a young one. If you're in school, help you be more creative, help you think more clearly. You know, if you're surrounded in a mess, then it's really hard to be clear. And recently, I found myself inside a home that was pretty much required anger management and had a lot of drug and alcohol abuse issues. And even though the people that lived in the property had those issues, the entire environment of the place had that too. So when youth came to that home, I told them this is a reflection of what drugs and alcohol and just a bad environment does to one's living space, because one's living space is like an external part of your body. So it's important to keep it clean and clear, just like your mind.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I also just want to comment on the beautiful wind chimes around you. I can see that connection of building a very calming and peaceful environment around you. I'm sure having those lovely chimes would keep me nice and calm and relaxed. So I love that you're leading by example. It's fantastic.
It wasn't planned. I chose the back deck and I forgot that I hung wind chimes by my office. I'm right outside my office door. So it also brings prosperity according to traditional Chinese beliefs. Where you hang a wind chime will bring abundance and prosperity. So That's why it's where my office is and where my wind chimes are.
Absolutely love that. But so I want to go into another question. So you are truly an expert in so much, and I know you have a lot of experience in herbology, ethnobotany, flower essences, and a lot in that realm. So I really also wanted to ask you, how can interactions with plants impact our mental well-being?
Well, when you walk inside a room full of people, let's say like it's a new classroom or like a new group of people in a social setting, and you don't know anybody in the room, right? And you suss it out and you check the people out, and maybe you're a wallflower and you don't talk to anybody, you wait for someone to walk to you, or you'll scope the space out and you'll see who feels safe, and maybe you'll have the courage to say hello to them, right? So people are like plants and plants are like people. And we have legs, that where we can walk to a plant, walk to a tree that's been standing there for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And perhaps one day, like, we recognize it, like it's like that person in the room that you want to meet. And you eventually meet that plant or out of your own personal curiosity. And then you get to have a relationship with it, because plants are sentient beings in our lives. And so it's up to us to meet them if we choose to, if we care to. And they're important because they were placed on Earth with specific instructions to provide us food and medicine and beauty and shelter and shade and clothing and food dyes and our tools, our basketry, so much more than I can possibly name today. And that's why it's important. Our DNA has a relationship with it. What we breathe out, they breathe in, and what they breathe in, they breathe out. So I hope I answered the question.
Absolutely. I really like how you were talking about having a relationship with plants. I feel really privileged in a lot of ways. I've lived on the same piece of land in Oklahoma. My family has lived here for 3 generations, and we have a small farm, and there are certain trees that I'll go to that feel like old friends. And I like to, when I'm able to come home, because a lot of my family still lives here, go out and see those spaces, and it brings me a lot of comfort. And I don't think a lot of people understand that fully, and that's okay. But I that really resonated with me when you were talking about that, and kind of building up those relationships within spaces where we can. And for me, that's also a part of my self-care, is to sort of familiarize myself with whatever surroundings I find myself in. I often have to be in urban environments for school. But when I can come home, spending that time outside or with the plants and animals that are familiar to me. And so that's important to me as a part of my self-care practice. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about why it's important to practice self-care, or even a couple of examples, or sort of the way that you think about self-care in some of your work.
I think in this day and age, self-care is getting off social media from time to time. I completely got off it just permanently back in 2019. There's so much information overload there, and it's not always kind or pretty, and self-care too is like slowing down and not putting so much on your plate. Self-care is resting. Self-care is eating well, like eating healthy food, if you have the means to do so. Unfortunately, not everyone has the means to be able to afford to eat well, which is our human birthright, to have healthy water and healthy food and clean air. And so self-care is perhaps having to save up for those things, or making sure we have that for ourselves, or get support from those that can provide that for us. I know it's hard for everyone today, these simple birthrights that should be able to be afforded to us. Self-care is drinking enough water daily. Self-care is taking a walk and just spending time with friends, that love and care for you. Self-care is surrounding yourself with people that love you. Self-care is learning how to love yourself first and foremost. You can't help others or love others if you don't start within with you. Self-care is so much, but for me, self-care is like sometimes a nap and slowing down. Self-care is hugging up my puppy these days. Sometimes an animal provides that self-care for us. And self-care is managing your time well. So to de-stress, when you don't manage your time well, then things pile up, and then, you feel stressed out. And stress is one of the major causes of disease. And there's so much stress in the world for so many reasons. So there's a big list for self-care. And I think you as an individual, as a young person, will innately know inside yourself what you require for you, that is good for you, that will be healthy for you, that is best for you. You hold these answers inside yourself. I'm not sharing anything that you don't already know for yourself. So I'm just a reminder.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's, a reminder that we all need sometimes. And just listening to everything that you said, felt like a form of self-care for myself. I just instantly felt relaxed, just listening to everything that you said. And something that stood out for me was whenever you mentioned caring for ourselves and loving ourselves being a really important first step in that self-care journey. And I think that that's something that can sometimes be hard for people who might be struggling with, mental health, is that recognition that we are all worthy of love from ourselves and, care for ourselves. So I just really, really wanted to uplift that note, because I think it's just so critical, especially for urban Native youth who might be struggling. So just thank you so much for everything that you said there. And I also wanted to lead into another question about wellness and well-being, which is, how can we practice physical activity to help promote both internal and external well-being? And I want to also throw this question to any audience members who are listening and watching about practices that you might use to promote internal and external well-being through physical activity.
Okay, so if there's a lot of students here, you're on the computer a lot, like set a timer and stand up from your chair and from your computer and take a 5-minute break, walk. And I think that's really important these days. I think a lot of people spend a lot of time on Zoom and a lot of time on their computer studying. And I think just setting that timer and remembering to just get up, stand, walk. It's summertime and it's like time for a lot of outdoor activities. So if you have the opportunity to go hang out or just with friends and, ride bikes, go skiing, go surfing, go do something fun. I'm not sure, what young people do today for activity. Take a spin class. I know that my niece teaches spin. But I think, if you're not as mobile, or if you're injured in any way and need to get your body back, walking is the greatest exercise that you can provide your body. Even slow steps. Like for me, I had an injury, and so I couldn't even walk like 10 feet at one point in time in my life. And so I built up until I could walk 100 feet, and then it built up to 2 miles, and then it ended up 6 miles a day. And last December, I had an injury. I was thrown out of an ATV. That's a long story, but a lot of physical therapy and a lot of walking got me back on my feet again, and I'm strong as ever. And so don't discount walking for physical activity.
Absolutely. I think that is such a great reminder. I feel very privileged a lot of the time that I am able-bodied. And I think that's a great reminder that, there are ways we can take care of ourselves no matter what our circumstance might be. And everybody is different, and everybody knows what's right for them and what will work for them. And I think this also kind of relates to something we were talking about earlier in terms of having access to outdoor spaces or having access to nature. And so knowing that that can sometimes be a privilege, how do we appreciate it if we can access that space? And how can we create healthy environments if it's not an option to be out in nature, if we're kind of stuck in the city? How can we continue to create healthy environments and those healthy relationships?
Well, cities have stairs and cities have ramps, and check them out and climb those stairs instead of like elevators, or and if you're ADA, then use those ramps, and cities provide a lot of opportunity to strengthen your body if you just see what's there. There's lots of rails, when you walk, and you can stretch your body on those. And there's benches where you can stretch your back. I use them all the time when I'm in the city. Tables, tables and chairs, you can stretch on those. You're not limited if you live in a city. It's an excuse if you say you're limited.
Yeah, my job right now is in an office building in downtown Tulsa, and I'm on the 8th floor. And so it can be really tempting to use that elevator, especially if I'm running a little bit late, which unfortunately is not a rare occurrence. But I definitely try to encourage myself to really use those stairs, and just get that extra elevated heart rate at the beginning of my day. So definitely thought a lot about the stairs one for sure. So for a last question, now this is one that our fellow youth council members asked their guest in the previous episode, but we really wanted to ask you this as well, with all of your experience in such a wide variety of spaces, about really the importance of having Native representation, in whatever spaces that you come across. So I just wanted to give you some time to address that importance of Native representation to close out.
Well, often, we're seen as like vestiges of the past. In fact, you go to a museum and often we're spoken of in past tense, like we don't exist. So Native representation in every area is absolutely important to say that we're alive, and we matter, and we're here, and we make a difference And we've always made a difference. And our voice, when in the room and as a collective, is strong. And to not be afraid to speak up and represent well is what I have to say about that. Often I go to meetings and, that's what I end up doing, is making sure like those agencies know we're in the room,
Thank you so much for that. And I think that's a really powerful place to end at, that, Natives are here, we exist, and we are increasingly in the room more, having a seat at the table, building new tables where we need to. So thank you for that powerful note to end on. And thank you so much for your time. Cameron, it's so great to see you in this virtual space. I want to give a really big thank you to both of you for sharing your stories and being vulnerable and providing your unique insights. That I know will be so valuable for all Native youth that are watching or listening to this episode. So as episode 3 comes to a close, please stay tuned for a chance to be entered into a raffle during the live segment of this episode. Thank you all so much for being here in this space with us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you all again for your responses and for sharing your thoughts on environmental and mental resilience with us. We really appreciated that. As we get ready to close out, I wanted to give another big thank you, Mado, to all of you in the audience for supporting the series and helping to uplift the voices of urban Native youth across the country. I believe I can speak for the rest of the council when I say that the mission and vision of the NCUIH Youth Council is very near and dear to all of our hearts. I know I had a great time putting together these episodes, and I hope everyone listening at home got to enjoy these past 3 watch parties. And we hope that by sharing our stories and learning from the wisdom of our wonderful guests, that other Native youth across Turtle Island can also feel more empowered and connected to their communities around them, because we never really are alone in these urban spaces, even if it might feel lonely at times. We also wanted to give another big Mado and shout out to the NCUIH team for supporting us. Shout outs to Sabu for his guidance and just all throughout the year and his work to support the Youth Council and our project. And another big shout out to Sean and the comms team for making all this possible and putting together the tech side of all of these episodes. We really could not have done this without you both and everybody else who put in so much time and effort into making this come to life. So to get to the end of it, we wanted to go ahead and do the prize drawings, but everyone has been waiting for. So you will soon see a link pop up in the chat box. Like I said, if you've been here before, you know what it is, but if this is your first time, you just click on that link. It brings you to a very simple form with just some basic info that we can use to contact you and officially enter you into the drawing for the raffle. So if you could please click on that link, fill that out really quick, and then please let us know when you are done by just typing the word done in the chat box so we can know when to officially do the drawing. So I will give a couple just quick moments for everyone to have time to fill that out. Okay, my apologies. Looks like it got posted just a couple of seconds behind, but yeah, we'll go ahead and make sure that everyone gets the chance to get entered into that, and we'll make sure to reach out to you. So please make sure to fill that out so we can give away some of these great prizes. But that is all that we have for tonight. And for the rest of the series. So just again, thank you all once again for joining our Youth Council on this journey. And really supporting these episodes where they can be found on the NCUIH YouTube channel. If you want to rewatch any of them or send them to someone who might find them entertaining or helpful. Thank you once again, and please have a really lovely night and rest of your weekend. So Mado, not goodbye, but Chihijaklis. See you all again.